The thing, first of all, that stands out about Nick, dude, other than the size, once you see him play here, is how productive he was. And obviously we're having a little freezing up issue. I'm just going to run it back since that's hopefully buffered. But the dude had, I think, 70-something tackles and like 15 or 16 sacks. For someone his size, Chris, that's you just don't see that very often from an interior player, maybe an edge guy or a linebacker, someone who has the opportunity to play all over the field. But to be able to be that productive from a kid that size, it's just you don't see that very often.
Yeah, and just eyeballing him on tape and seeing his size and sort of the profile, the skill set. You mentioned how he could be a true nose type. I could certainly see that, a shade but maybe even could be a guy that could be versatile enough to play some, interior sort of a 3-technique pass rushing type. When I look at him, he looks like you said, he looks like a guy that can be that shade type, that nose type, occupy blocks. But he does have some pass rush pop, based on numbers and based on looking at his tape. He moves well. You look at the build, he's got a big lower body. The arms, he's got the ability to push the pocket. That's so important nowadays, when you're talking about your interior pass rush, because a lot of teams are going to really hone in on edge rushers and they're going to try to do things schematically, to account for those guys and take them away. You want it everywhere, but it really becomes a game changer for you when you have a guy that's that disruptive on the interior. We saw it this season with Javon Kinlaw, with what he could do. You talk about his ability to get off blocks in the run game and just cause havoc, eat up double teams if he was double teamed, or pass rush. Javon Kinlaw made some plays that resulted in interceptions for Carolina this year. Pushed the pocket, had pass rush. So I'm not saying Nick Barrett's going to be Kinlaw. If he could be 3/4 of the player, that would really be something for Carolina. But there's a lot here to work with. You can see in terms of the size and skill set, there's a lot there that you can't teach, and I think that's what you look for in a tackle.
Yeah, and I think probably fits right in, Chris, with what we've seen South Carolina land really the last couple of classes. I think you look at that position. Really every position, but that position in particular, I look at defensive line, offensive line as positions where you have to continuously stack, and that means a handful of good players one year, handful of good players the next year. It never really stops. You're never, you're never satisfied with where you are on the defensive line. And this is a kid that, some of them are going to be ready year one, and some of them are going to be ready 2 or 3 years down the line. And you have to have enough talent, enough guys in theory on your campus already. That the guys that are ready to play. The guys that aren't have some time to develop. And this is a kid I think also worth mentioning. The first win for Tracy Rocker as defensive line coach. Now, I think South Carolina, like you said earlier, was already in pretty good position with the kid. He, for whatever reason, sometimes we see it all the time. Sometimes kids just click at a particular school. And it's felt to me like he just sort of clicked at South Carolina. You go back to that junior day. Was it early February? I was going back through the articles that we had written about him. There was an article where, the title was South Carolina zeroing in on Nick Barrett. And I think early on, South Carolina just felt like that was going to be they were going to be a long-term factor for him and maybe the favorite for him. John Scott Jr. was, of course, the defensive line coach at the time. He leaves. You sort of wonder, all right, is this going to affect his recruitment or not? And obviously it didn't. I think the fact that Muschamp was, heavily involved there. And Kyle Krantz gets a big win in the state of North Carolina. I think he's a guy that doesn't get talked about, much as far as the big name guys on the staff, but I think deserves credit for going into North Carolina, like you said, an area that's not heavily populated, but they found a guy, they evaluated, they moved in, and then they land him. I think a good get in that sense all the way around. And